Good afternoon and welcome to our TRA Academy channel. This is the first channel organized by the TRA Academy, University of Sharjah, and the Open UAE community. We hope that you all enjoy this fruitful discussion today. The past few weeks have seen an unprecedented global situation. Cities and major hubs have gone on lockdown, and it is safe to say that regular life, be it professional or personal, will be fundamentally changed forever. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen the importance of a digital infrastructure to support working remotely in order to keep the economy going and maintain a semblance of normality. Open source has proved to be a vital tool for IT professionals, freelancers, and companies alike during this time. It has been especially helpful for people at home that have no access to paid software. I am Hamad Fikri, Senior Engineer at the Center of Digital Innovation at Telecommunication Regulatory Authority in the United Arab Emirates. Joining me today is a group of elite members of the open source community here in the UAE. Dr. Huda Al-Khuzaimi is a professor at NYU and the director of the Center of Cybersecurity at the university. Her specializations are cybersecurity and cryptology. Welcome, Dr. Huda.
Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mohammed, for having us.
Thank you. Dr. Ahmed Al-Dabbagh is Director of Technology Transfer and Partnership at the Sharjah Research Technology and Innovation Park. Welcome, Doctor. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mohammed.
Sharif Salim is a Cloud Solutions Lead Architect at Microsoft. His interests lie in artificial intelligence, big data, blockchain, and cloud computing. Good to have you with us, Sharif.
Thank you, Mohammed. Good to have you all.
And last but not least, we have Ioannis. He's a Threat Intelligence Senior Specialist, and his interests are in threat intelligence and response and security architecture. Welcome to our panel, and welcome to all our viewers.
Thank you, Mohammed. Good to have you.
Dr. Huda, let's begin with you. In what ways has open source helped improve the crisis management capabilities in the current situation? And has this situation highlighted any glaring needs that need to be addressed in open source?
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Once again, thank you for dedicating your afternoon for this active session. So open source, how did open source help us react to the current crisis? We could see at the moment there is a global move to use open source, whatever it is. When I'm talking about open source, I'm referring to software, I'm referring to hardware, referring to business development in general, has been used for this crisis and pandemic to accelerate the process of providing a solution and to look beyond what we call in the past a return of investment, but now we are speaking about return of a value. And the value is a value that could be provided for communities at large. So you could see companies, you could see communities repurposing their resources to tackle the challenges that exist at the moment. So what did we see? We saw open source hardwares that has been provided, blueprints that have been provided online for the mass to produce specific PPEs, to produce specific medical equipments. You could see this enabled a scalability of providing a solution. So it's not anymore a certain number of people or manufacturing capability who has the access to these resources of production, but even the mass. We have a group, we have an initiative in the UK that says 3D Crowd UK, which they were taking requests for generating specific PPEs, and they're using they're motivating the communities in UK to use their own 3D printers to just print the masks and print the PPE equipments to provide for the medical and healthcare providers. We saw also movements where people in Africa are using the blueprints provided for the ventilators online to build their own ventilators. We saw a cut in the development life cycle. In the past, you have to design, you have to develop, you have to test, you have to integrate, and then retest again. But right now, maybe this is good or bad. Sometimes it's a challenge. You could bypass one phase and provide the prototype in a shorter amount of time. And this is what happened in Spain. And within 30 days of producing the ventilators blueprints, they were able to produce their first prototypes that helped the country. We've seen as well a huge capitalization on open source hardware capabilities and cloud resources, like what we've seen in robotics, for example, and initiating what we call smart hospitals. And these smart hospitals worked in Wuhan, for example, to relieve the medical staff from their tasks and to utilize robotics here and open source IoT kind of devices to measure vitals and do these other things. So open source plays a vital role right now in responding to the pandemic as it is, but it could strategically play a bigger role if we give it the platform that it deserves. And this way of elevating it and giving it the platform that it deserves is a responsibility of everybody who is in the ecosystem, especially mega technology companies. They have a responsibility to empower open source at the moment. What we are lacking now is having a focused crowdsourcing abilities to build software platforms that could help us connect a wider group of stakeholders, not only the developers, but the developers with the public, with the medical teams, with the scientists, to build, for example, a treatment plan or a solution, and cut down the silos and cut down the layers that would exist in the middle and between them. There are a few platforms, but they are not holistic, and making sure that this connectivity is there for everyone, and teams could work together in providing, for example, vaccinations or treatments across the globe for this specific crisis, which is COVID-19. Thank you so much, Mohammed.
Thank you. So, Doctor, have you seen a response from these private corporations in recent times in response to have you seen like a humanitarian response from private corporations in terms of what you said? Are they providing these ecosystems? Are they providing these platforms and these ways to help the community and the world?
Yes, like I've said, like we've seen a lot of, for example, IBM have offered a lot of their open source, they have offered a lot of their solutions online for people to use, and educational courses to be used. We've seen universities, Ivy League University offering their courses for other students to just, provide an open learning opportunity for everyone. We've seen Boeing working on, for example, redesigning or repurposing their internal structures to just build solutions to combat the current pandemic. Ventilators companies offering their own blueprints, for free, so the community could start building this. 3D printing companies, mega 3D printing companies, repurposing their whole manufacturing line to provide PPEs rather than anything else. So yes, this has been happening on a global, we've been talking for the past, I don't know how many years about, all of these global development goals, and the importance of the global development goals and making sure that citizens across the universe have the rights to have education, healthcare, and no poverty, and all of the 17 goals that has been addressed. I think this crisis that we are going through has put us closer to achieving, sustainable development goals than the previous efforts, because people prioritized everything in order to just tackle a solution. And open source, again, is a vital catalyst in this.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Dr. Ahmed, has COVID-19 fundamentally changed the way open source is utilized?
Yes, definitively. I think we have seen the big change during the COVID-19, that we went from if I go to the definition of the open source software, this how was defined in Wikipedia, and you will see clearly it says that the open source software is a prominent example of an open collaboration. But before COVID-19, I think this open collaboration, everybody suffered about it. Why? Because sharing, collaborating, it was a big problem everywhere. Everyone would like to have his own sources. Everyone, he would like to have the credit, everyone. Now, completely changed because we have one enemy worldwide, and everybody here did the efforts to battle this enemy. And here where we see this, the open collaboration, it divided in two ways. Yes, during the COVID-19, you see here, if you go to the GitHub, you put COVID-19, you find 778 repository results. And this is a big, big, big number from only February until now. And we have, for each repository, we have source code, we have hardware solution, we have also web-based monitoring tools, we have an open data, we have an open innovation, and here where anybody can go to this 27,000 repositories and surf on it, and he can find great results, I think, in combating this COVID-19. In the other hand here, this is the other branch which created now this what exactly Dr. Huda mentioned, is the open hardware. And here with the beauty that even the big companies, they open their models, I think, and they spread it to the community, like designing the PPE or the face shield or the even robotic design for coronavirus here. And we see this, the open hardware solution can prevent the spread and suffering of the novel coronavirus. Here, when we see these two branches created during the coronavirus, here when we see a new open community. Here, this new open community, which result to a new way of openness, connectivity, transparency, sharing, and caring. And this was completely absent before, I think, or it was present, but we suffered to get this. What the impact of this openness, connectivity, transparency, sharing, and caring, the impact, you will see it in geoeconomy. Before, when we talk about open source software, the impact is only in some hardwares and in software. And this software community, either it can go beyond and be commercialized and be a proprietary, or it goes to be an open and die to a certain time. Here, the geoeconomy means we have an influence in the geopolitics and geoeconomy of the world. World population by the connectivity. I think here the open source, as exactly what Dr. Huda mentioned, the IoT, but IoT, you need a connectivity to have IoTs. Here where the 5G is coming. And here the 5G, I think the deployment of the 5G, it can connect everyone in the world. Everyone will have his IPv6 number and will be connected for and sharing resources to be open software or open hardware. The venture creation, you will see in new companies. Look at Zoom. Yesterday, it published that Zoom in December, it had 30 million users. Nowadays, Zoom has 300 million users. Why? Because Zoom gives the full-fledged freedom of people to use the video conferencing and the webinar in a very easy and nice manner. Here you will see a lot of companies are coming as new companies to from the coronavirus era, I think, to serve the community and to serve the world. And the two specific sectors you will see big change on it is healthcare and education, to be honest with you. These two sectors were, I think, not sufficient. We didn't give too much development on them in the past. I'm talking worldwide, I think, and here now the world will be concentrated more in healthcare and education. I think I answered the question, Mohammed.
Very interesting response. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Also, Doctor, what role you think is open source playing in the fourth industrial revolution?
Excellent question, Mohammed. If we go a little bit back in the time, if we imagine we are in 2010, what happened to us if we have the pandemic? I think we had no digital transformation strategy implemented everywhere, and limited open source applications. Average internet connection speed, it was at a 25 megabit per second maximum. Very expensive and restricted video conferencing, no cloud computing, no fast computing power, huge storage. Investment in IT infrastructure is significant, which resulted to no online schooling, no online working, no online shopping, no smart government, and no fourth industrial revolution. Why I'm saying about fourth industrial revolution here? Because we have to create a new labor forces for the fourth industrial revolution. And here the COVID-19 accelerated some of these competences in the market, like the 5G connectivity to all. I think will be a big mandate for all countries worldwide to accelerate the deployment of 5G. We saw SpaceX deploying satellites, I think, to deploy internet for free or not expensive internet to the whole world. But as countries, I think they will go beyond that and to go for 5G. IoT in healthcare is very important. IoT, to have it as an open hardware, I think, solution for all. And here we saw the development of IoT during the coronavirus in the smart hospitals, as what Dr. Huda mentioned. AI embedded on open source and educational platform. This is the time, I think, to have an AI deployment, and expensive AI should be out. I think an open source AI platform should be there. Smart manufacturing and 3D printing. It was a boom during the coronavirus. We saw the deployment, and this is grass, I think, thanks to the compatibility of the 3D printing files worldwide before the coronavirus. Here, where the spread of the format of the 3D printing was so easy worldwide, with the openness and the honesty of people to do this one. RPA, robotics, and drone, also they did a lot. In Spain, I heard this is about the pharmaceutical products are done in drone between villages and cities. But the pragmatic change you will see here by using this is the change mind from supply chain versus demand chain. I think here we were in the supply chain era, and this era will be reduced, and the demand chain will be completely dominating the market. As you see, Netflix is the demand chain. You see the Talabat, you see a lot of applications where the supply chain is away and the demand chain will be the dominant in the market.
Thank you, Doctor. That's a very interesting response. Sharif, now we move on to you. What changes, Sharif, have you seen in government usage of blockchain and artificial intelligence during the pandemic? Have the governments valued from using blockchain and artificial intelligence?
Sharif, we can't hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, so actually that's correct. We can see that the pandemic impacts on governments and even the structure of how we will build the future governments over interconnected governments as well has been impacted heavily using those two technologies from AI and blockchain. I will start first by the blockchain itself. What was the impact that happens? Of course, the COVID-19 crisis has revealed general lack of connectivity and data exchange built into our global supply chains. And that, of course, occurred because we are working now from home. The majority of us took a completely cursory glance at their home office setups and decided to need an upgrade. So they started to purchase a lot of things online, and that impacted heavily the entire global supply chain. And of course, it hits exponential impact on the export and imports, and also the small companies and startups that they manufacture those different technologies to be delivered at the end user and continue their work. Of course, the second impact is that the money transfers and exchanges that is happening is no longer real time, and there is a lot of liquidity impacted the banking systems as well. And of course, that impact the economy from different angles, also the entire ecosystem. So the terms of blockchain as a technology itself, it's a distributed ledger, open source, that helps to settle data and settle data records across multiple media in real time. So governments started to see that this is an absolute area of interest that they can start to capitalize and build a future resiliency of government structure that will depend on building a transparent, interoperable, and even connected network globally, not just in the space of different industry. And we can see our beautiful government in UAE as an example, the Ministry of Community Development, MOCD, and how they have started to build a media, full digital media of continuing your day-to-day job completely online. And also using e-signature and digital identity to certify your document and proceed your day-to-day activities online without interventions. And also we can see Mohab as a government, the Ministry of Health and Prevention started to build a data reconciliated identity to maintain the data health records and also to keep us updated about the COVID-19 status and also how we can maintain a full a single version of truth about the latest updates regarding the pandemic itself. And that's why chatbot is much better utility in the media as of today in order to give you the best updated version of how you mitigate and cope with the virus updates. Also, there are numerous projects started to happen as well, again, in the Department of Urban Planning and Municipalities in DPM, which basically they started to even give you the ability to do most of the land registries and even moving your authority and also documentations completely online, digitally signed from one party to another without even interacting with any human being, almost, unless it's virtual. So yes, that's true that we have a lot of development using those technologies to innovate. AI is doing a lot of good, I would say, achievements in the health sector specifically, where we can actually help us to accelerate the development of virals, of antivirals, and also vaccinations, and give us a certain accurate data in order to give us, in order to provide us the best mean to mitigate the issue quickly.
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you for that interesting response. We move on to Yohannes. Yohannes, what issues related to threat intelligence did users of open source software encounter during the COVID-19?
A very good example of open source contribution during the COVID-19 pandemic for cybersecurity and threat intelligence. It was a software, for example, called MESP, which is a sort of malware information sharing platform. Now, this is an open platform that is currently used for over 6,000 entities around the world. And you can imagine that the pandemic was a threat to our health, but not only. A lot of, it was taken advantage very systematically to spread misinformation and also take advantage of the misinformation and attack organizations using phishing techniques and spam emails in order to, with an ultimate goal to exfiltrate information and damage companies and individuals. Now, MISP, as a threat intelligence platform, it had a spin-off that called it COVID-19, where the open community shared information about where these threats are coming from to protect not only organizations but individuals. For example, these emails that have been distributed are coming from a threat actor. They're not real. They're not after. They're asking about your private information. They're trying to steal your credentials. And the very good part about this is that this malware sharing platform was not only used to communicate indicators of compromise, as we call it, but also to communicate medical information. It was used as a means of transferring medical information as well, apart from threat information to various entities. So yeah, the open source community really jumped in here. They really took advantage of the tools that are out there being used, and they tried to help the global community to benefit not only from information that will help organizations and people secure themselves, but also to gain access to other information as well. Now, there are a lot of also, but obviously, just the tool itself does not do the job. There are things called there's something called Open Taxi, which is basically a means of transferring information to these platforms. So Open Taxi is something that is used to transfer indicators and information to these platforms, and it is also maintained from the open source community. And the most important thing is also the repositories, the information where the information is held. Now, open source repositories like, for example, Hail a Taxi hold over 1.1 million indicators right now that they are actually being shared for free to be consumed by by entities and individuals as such. So yes, I mean, there has been a lot of influence from the open source community in threat intelligence, cybersecurity, even in an area which is mostly, governed by proprietary means. So
that's interesting. So the major shift to remote working has obviously necessitated greater security controls. What steps do you see as necessary going forth if remote working is to become a more of a permanent global shift?
This is an interesting question. It kind of like helps to imagine it like a shepherd that has all these sheep in the pen. So you can control, the shepherd can control all the animals when they are in one place. But if they, for example, he let them out and go all around the state, you would have to pay attention to each one of them. So basically, you can think about it as entities. How it depends on how the entities were well prepared. There were some, for example, organizations that they had a very good security posture. They invested a lot in security culture. They had very good cybersecurity processes in place. So for them, it was, for these kind of entities, there was more of a shift of perspective, if you wish. Like, I'm currently looking, everything is inside, everything is here. Now I need to change my perspective because everything is around, not just around one country, but there were employees stacked all over the world in different countries. So the perspective had to change. The control had to shift a lot to the individual and to the endpoint. And for some companies, for example, or entities around the world, if they were not very well prepared about this, they needed to do this shift fast. And this is a challenge because people had to work from home, people had to work from other countries, or people had to work, they were stuck, for example, and they didn't have their own company machine and they had to access corporate, had corporate access from their own machines. So all of this had to shift perspective to the individual and to the endpoint, and also to geolocation, which was quite a big challenge for everybody around the world. Depending on how well you were prepared and how good processes you had in place, procedures, culture, it then gave some entities more of a advance than the others. But yes, this was a big challenge.
Thank you, Jonas. And now we'll address some questions to all panelists. So what do you see as the future of open source in the next 5 years? And what types of software do you think will become open source over the next year?
Yes, I can start.
Please go ahead, Doctor.
Okay. I see a lot of open hardware systems coupled with the open softwares already deployed. What I see also is the open hardware based on IoT, as I said, because the automation will be, I think, the first word everywhere to be deployed in schools, at home, at work, in office, in hospitals, everywhere. I think here, preparing to the remote working, I don't see it as a new thing because it happened already. I think this is kind of only a habit of people to accept the remote working. But what I see a lot of improvement in healthcare sector by using artificial intelligence. A lot of emphasis will become, I think the spread of the coronavirus, it was a use case developed very well. I think it can prevent the world for the next pandemic by using artificial intelligence in a proper way. I think artificial intelligence, we have to force to be open, but controlled by professional ethics or international ethics by the use of artificial intelligence properly.
Interesting response.
I can take the next one.
Please go ahead.
The lesson learned from the pandemic, it taught us that we are going into the execution of the fourth industrial revolution, which is building a connected community and cities as well. So that will involve a lot of different technologies and ecosystem integration, and that requires openness. Every single company or technology companies needs to open and integrate with many other systems and other technology vendors as well, in order to execute a strategy of 5G or IoT, or even exchanging data to remediate the pandemic crisis and find an accurate data through the collaboration of data science and using those data that is being generated from those technology vendors, the governments, the different companies, and collaborating together to finding a solution and confinement measurement for such issue. And that actually helped the acceleration of developing vaccination and antivirals and all of those things. Back in the old days, we used to have experts, consultants who give us based on specific data, what we should do next. Now it's completely augmented and autonomous. It can be done by machine learning algorithms that can help us give that amount of accuracy on our results on the day-to-day job. And of course, I think such pandemic impact on the society is going actually to push the open source adoption more and more, and even opening the products to be able to be given to the consumer and to be driven by the customer in order to determine the path of technology and evolution. I think this is how things will evolve. AI, blockchain, IoT, and even 5G is a major pillars that I think will contribute in opening those ecosystem end to end.
Thank you, Sharif.
If I might add to that, thank you, Sharif and Dr. Ahmed, for this great, insightful addition to the conversation. But it's very important to notice that these elements of technology, we already have them from like before, AI and IoT, open source platform. But the current situation mandated a shift of the way we prioritize how we build a business and how we conduct a development of a solution. So instead of us thinking only of revenues, we're thinking of value that you create for a community. And I would like to emphasize on this. And this is why right now you see the future of open source going toward, I would say, a mass deployment, because open source has proved right now an ease access to market. And number one, and also it proved that a readiness to market, like the way of making sure that products are ready to be provided to the market is being done on a faster base. You can reprioritize the way you are using your resources to focus on high development for your own internal resources and outsource everything else to the community, because this is actually what's happening. The community, whoever is having a resource, this kind of a new trend of crowdsourcing everything, and this is what's happening. You're crowdsourcing initially everything, and maybe this would create also a new revenue stream for these individuals who are part of this community. That's way cheaper than just going to outsourced company. So the definition of a skill set is going to be different right now. Also, the way you are building these skill sets is going to be different. And instead of, we've been through debates in the past where we're saying this huge technological jump is going to let people behind, and then these people who are behind are going to lose jobs. And And I would always say that on an optimistic note, we are not going to leave people behind or lose jobs. We are going to repurpose the skill sets of these people to accommodate to the new jobs that are being created, the new technologies that are being built. So when we are talking about farming in the age of the current crisis, you might have to do distant farming. And if you are doing distant farming, you might have to employ IoT, sensors, machine learning, and everything to just conduct a smart farm. And to do this, then you have to repurpose the skill sets of your employees who were there in the farm, of your gardeners who were there in specific farms in the past. So all of these things will capitalize on the knowledge. I would say we will have a knowledge-based economy. We will have to have a knowledge-based economy right now. We cannot run away from this kind of truth. I would hope that with the efforts of crowdsourcing, we are going to break silos to help people learn more, to help people achieve a higher level of skills, and to just provide faster results for the markets and for the communities.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, and my view on that would be that I think that what COVID-19 showed us is that the world needs information, and they need information fast and securely and validated. When this pandemic happened, the need for information for across all industries was very adamant. For threat intelligence to get the right the source of threat information, for hospitals to get the right source of cases, for sharing information about creating vaccines, and there was a lot of software developed for this purpose, to open APIs, data harvesting, web crawlers. And even obviously the adaptation of blockchain to verify and validate these sources, and also ensure privacy of the individuals or the entities that are sharing this information. So I think that going forward, the open industry is adapting a lot on how the information is shared across the globe, how it is accessible, consumed, if you wish, because obviously, it's not enough for sharing information. It's also having, making sure that it can be consumed properly and accurately, and also being validated as well. So a lot of technology, a lot of open source technology was developed for this, and I think that this will also be a trend moving forward.
Thank you, Ioannis. So let's move on to the next question. How are global companies coping financially in light of the increase of open source?
So I'm gonna, do you want to start, Sharif, maybe?
Yeah, so I think that there was a major problem with open source for the past 20 years. I think we used to call it open source sustainability crisis. So the problem that happened is that opening a code and that benefits a lot of different technology angles was benefit the enterprise and the small companies and the startups as well. The problem with that is that open source has a chance of becoming a non-wearable resource if the enterprise consume it without a contributing cash or code back. So they needed to contribute back to the community. They are taking from the community, they are consuming from the community, but they are not giving back or giving a feedback or even updates to the open source community. So that loop that exists between the enterprise using an open source community-based solutions and trying to feed that back into the open source again after consuming that was a major gap for the past 20 years. I think a lot of companies like Microsoft, Red Hat, IBM, Google, Amazon, and many others started to develop that muscle from the enterprise, and also taking that learning that is being executed in reality in the enterprise and seeing the fruits of executions out there and try to bring it back to the community. So it's always a complete loop and try to remediate that problems that we used to have for the past 20 years, the abuse of those amount of efforts in the enterprise landscape, and now it's being contributed back to the community in a proper, I would say, contribution. So that's what we see so far happening between the enterprise and open source community. It's starting to merge, and I think there is a lot of contribution you can see from many enterprises, from GE, from Rolls-Royce, BMW, Bosch, Siemens. They're actually writing the code that they contributed on the open source communities, and they started to write back and give back for others to learn and build on top of it as well.
Excellent. Wow. Anyone else would care to answer this question, or should we move on to the next one?
I see it from different perspective, to be honest with you, Muhammad. I see it from the innovation perspective. How I see that, okay, in the past, even this proprietary solution from industry, it was for open standard because they can have the maximum of the market, I think, to be deployed and compatible to the solution. Open hardware also we have seen now with the coronavirus and the open software. What I see, I think this is each company will have its own open innovation arm based on open sources. And this open sources, it doesn't mean open source software. It can be open source hardware, open source software, and open standard even for the compatibility. Here it will create, you will see in the future, consortiums. People, okay, I think consortium was limited only for standards. Now the consortium will be for a new application and new solutions. And this one will lead the companies to work together, all together. They share information, but in the time they have their own solution, they can go and commercialize it by their own. And here where you see the commercialization will be proprietary, but the development will be under open source.
So I think, like, we've seen tangibly 100%, like what Dr. Ahmed said and what Sharif said, open source provided arms for these global companies to have business continuity in the middle of this crisis. And this business continuity did not come free of charge, of course, because they have to change everything in order or repurpose their own internal structure in terms of the way they run a business or the way they develop a product in order to meet the objectives of the market and the objectives of the need that is being created now. But the number one advantage that they have achieved is that their CSR initiatives, the corporate social responsibility initiatives, are not light anymore. They're not something that is separate from their own identity, but they are embedded. These things are embedded within their identity, and they generate enough revenues for them, hopefully. Hopefully we'll say that they generate enough revenues in the future for them to be sustainable in the long run amidst this crisis. We see supply chain companies, for example, benefiting a lot of moving towards a digital platform, because this will guarantee a wider customer base for them. I don't know if they can cope up with the current demand that is happening. And at the same time, we get to see a faster access to markets, global markets, and we're not talking only about local markets, but also a faster ability to adapt to the local markets needs. So the financial gain on the long run, and I would like emphasize on the F part, if they were able to inherently adapt this new business model for the long run for their businesses, is gonna be rewarding for these businesses.
Thank you, Doctor.
I think here we have to go back to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum when he said, "Innovate or die." I think during the coronavirus, we have seen the supply chain has a big weakness, specifically when you are from other countries. And here, we see it from the masks, from the surgical mask, and we see it from the PPEs, and we see it from something else. Here, where I think locally in each country, the innovation should increase from open sources and open community to do an open innovation. And here, you don't need in the future, I think, to be more on the supply chain. You will be more on the demand chain, as I stated during my presentation.
See, if you're not aware, you have to adapt to your current circumstances, no no matter what it is. So I think what that comment meant, if you don't innovate, you die. It meant that if you don't adapt to your current situation, that just means that you're not doing anything at all. Excellent response, Doctor. Thank you. Anyone else would like to add to this question, or should we move on?
Let's move on. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So so we can successfully say that COVID-19 fundamentally changed the future of open source. Can we talk and more about that?
Can you repeat that, please, again? Fundamentally.
So, has COVID-19 fundamentally changed the future of open source from what we see in the current times? The adaptation, the acceptability, the overall acceptance of open source in all communities?
I would hope so. We need to just make sure that we are mindful and aware of the contribution of open source to the current pandemic. The first coronavirus monitoring platform, data monitoring platform, was built out of open source kind of solution. You've seen like Python, development has like increased amongst this, pandemic and crisis phase at the moment. We've heard a lot of information, like what we discussed earlier. Sharif, if you want to tap into this conversation here, when we were talking about the fact that even if proprietary software companies are currently right now trying to acquire open source platform, it's meant to empower these platform. And I would leave the empowerment part to Sharif to just highlight. Sharif, can you give us the example that you just mentioned on Microsoft and GitHub?
Yes, so as an example for the empowerment of the open source technologies as well, and the contribution to the end user or to the end customer, the acquisition as well was mainly to help the community build more muscles and force the enterprises to give back to the community, as a point that I mentioned before. Since the GitHub is becoming the crown jewel of source code development of the proprietary software, and even taking out from the open source communities out there and libraries, and make that cycle complete from the enterprise and the open source communities. So basically, it helps creating a better supportability from an enterprise perspective, and also create a mechanism and policies and standards for the enterprises to give back to the open source community, and even create a mechanism for them to get rewarded back. So that's basically the acquisition you will start seeing from an open source community-based solutions or resources for companies like Microsoft and others started to acquire in order to help that community move and grow more. And going back to your question, Muhammad, on how that changed the future of open source, and I will take an AI and open data as an example. You can see that Stanford's and MIT, Boston Dynamics, they started to create a library for open AI and data initiatives, which is basically, it helps you to identify, design, and interact the applications itself that help us make a lot of rich of collective decision and easily discoverable, accessible, and analyzable data that can help the doctors around the globe boost the health professionals' ability to learn, while reducing the threshold of uncertainty of such impactful virus that we don't know the source or the root cause, and we are trying to simulate the back and forth what happened, and that impact heavily any projects related to pharmacology or medical and hospital care, or even mobility analysis, to reduce any this crucial timing that we are living in. So that's that's the point of view that I see so far.
For me, a concern that I see here also is that in terms of the during the pandemic, the focus of the open source was availability, and that shortened the development life cycle effectively. That also created a need for a volumetric availability of software that taps to our needs, either to allow information sharing or to allow for creation of ventilators in terms of open source hardware. But in a lot of these, I think that the what was taken least into account was security. So a lot of unsecure code, a lot of unsecure software. So imagine a mass amount of software being distributed around, and with serious vulnerabilities that could be taken advantage by global threat actors because of the situation. So and I think that the companies that, like, for example, like Microsoft, that acquiring GitHub, should also try to also I put an effort into try to empower the developers to create, not just to create material, but to create secure material, and it is important as well.
So should companies adopt open software, Jonas, used to save money, or you think it's a vulnerability to have it within government, within companies, within organizations?
It is early for open source software to be secure right now. I mean, it's not exactly, there's not really a great focus on security from open source. I mean, there is, but no, but this doesn't mean that proprietary software is always secure, but there is the market drives this software publish vulnerabilities. When you have financial impact, you would try to keep your product secure, especially if it's adopted by big companies or governments. You don't want a security incident on your hands. Open software, on the other hand, is still young in this respect. I think it still has a bit of way to go in terms of producing not just functional and well-working open source software, but also secure. And I think that the world is reluctant. I mean, COVID-19 in the pandemic, obviously it was adopted because necessity creates need. And during the pandemic, as you well said before, you need to innovate, otherwise you are left behind. But in the long term, in the future, there definitely needs to be a push into creating secure open source software if we want to see open source software in the future being adopted by government or bigger entities as such.
Regarding this question, only short sentence, I think we have to open to the audience. The pandemic is demonstrating the extent to which high level of collaboration are required for deeply interconnected societies to manage and recover from complex exponential systematic crises. The fact that viruses are borderless is just another reason why humans need to invest in dramatically retooled principles of mechanism for global cooperation. And here where open source can lead this initiative, I think, worldwide.
Yes.
With blockchain as well.
Yes.
Where visibility, traceability, interoperability, that can help us fortify and better connect and improve the resilience of the global supply chain market, for example.
So there is no monopoly here to a single technology. The world, it's as what Dr. Ahmed said. Dr. Ahmed said something important. It is the cycle of reinventing innovation again. The way we innovate, the way we get over our 1960s, 1980s, 2000 technologies in order to step away from our comfort zone of developing, for example, blockchain, because we're stuck with the blockchain for a while now. And we're stuck with the same AI kind of platforms for a while now. It's time that we put this into applicability and put it in the market, and then we focus into new innovation. So maybe this is where the future of open source is going. I would say, again, I said it before and I'm gonna repeat it, the crowdsourcing kind of open source solution is the key to this, because it provides a level of transparency across all layers, to provide a level of communication that is necessary right now. And it brings people into the development that they weren't there, stakeholders that they were supposed to be in the development, that they weren't there to start with, which are the customers, the public, the maybe the integrators at an early stage of developing a solution, and this will maybe give us a scalable, give us a better solutions to just highlight and use.
Thank you, Doctor, for your response.
Thanks.
So we'll take up questions from the audience at the moment. We'll just wait for the response from them. There is one question about the new generation of blockchain called DAG chain, which seems to be a better and has a lot more advantages to blockchain. And how do you see the future in this?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
There's one of the questions was that there is a new type of blockchain called DAG chain, and DAG chain is supposed to be a far better and has far more advantages than blockchain. Do you have anything to say regarding this?
So I'm not familiar with DAG chain and how it is unique in comparison to the market's solution available right now when it comes to other blockchains. So I'm not gonna comment on that.
Okay.
I think it has to do with performance, blockchain performance, because from what I know, the current blockchain, I think it started hitting some sort of performance limitations. So DAG chain kind of like it was a kind of an upgrade, if you wish. You could even use multiple blockchains in parallel seamlessly to allow for data to be
DAG chain
and transmitted, yes, faster. And you know, it was a scalability change from what I know about DAG chain.
Yeah, got it.
So basically, DAC is one of the examples of the different protocols that blockchain uses, like Ethereum, Hyperledgers, and many others. It's basically to enhance specific content based to be close to the users and managing the identity as well. This is what we call the next generation of internet, where we're to bring your content and data next to the user, allowing the users only to access those data as well. This is definitely an important topic regarding the data privacy and also the data usage rights, since we spoke about data sharing and open data sharing across different organizations contributing together in finding a resolution or a common ground to resolve a problem. So blockchain is very crucial to maintain the privacy of the data and the security of those data as well, authorizing that through the end user or the consumer in order to allow you to use the data on the rights or not. So that's a very important topic, I think, since the pandemic will expose the government and companies to open their data and share it, but that might breach the end user's privacy as well. So how we will incorporate the blockchain there to maintain the ethics of AI, the ethics as well of data sharing, and maintaining the privacy and security across different organizations together.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharif, and thank you to all the panelists for their insightful opinions on the current pandemic and the future of open source. We would like to thank everyone for attending today's panel. I think the time is up. We hope that you found this discussion thought-provoking. Stay tuned for our upcoming virtual events. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.